there are institutions that have developed their own ethical decision framework so that any employee who is faced with an ethical dilemma follows the same ethical framework, like what we did yesterday. That now makes it easier for employees to make decisions. But if there's no such a framework, we just make decisions based on what we think is the right thing to do. And sometimes what you think is the right thing to do may not necessarily be the right thing to do. And then under another practical and implementable management interventions includes effective communication regarding its ethical commitment to stakeholders. It is not just enough to put measures in place. As an organization, you need to come out and declare your stand on what your ethics policy is all about. Because when you do, then you're putting yourself, it's like you're putting yourself on the line. You're telling people, this is what we stand for. So you're opening their eyes and they'll be trying to see whether your actions and your words align. So why manage ethics? Overall ethics management is essential for maintaining trust and credibility with customers, employees, and the public. When you put those measures that we've mentioned, when you put them in place, then you gain trust and credibility with your customers, employees, the public, and even other stakeholders. And remember, trust is one thing that's very, very critical in any relationship. In your business, in organizations, trust is a very important component. Once you lose it, it becomes very hard to gain it, no matter what you do. We can manage ethics and make it easier for good employees to do the right thing. We've said that. To make it difficult for bad people to do bad things and for good people to do stupid things. That is one of the main reasons why you should manage ethics, so that you make it difficult for people to engage in unethical conduct. Ethics cannot manage itself and requires care and attention in any organization. And that is why you have the integrity officers. Otherwise, the organization could have as well said, ethics will just manage itself. After all, everybody has got their own perspective when it comes to ethics and integrity. So let nature run its course. So what are the requirements for ethics management? Now, these are the practical applications that you are asking for on Monday, that you want those practical applications on how to apply or to translate your theoretical knowledge on ethics to practicality. And those are the 5 things that you need. Ethics management is implemented through those 5 steps. The first one is ethics risk assessment. Lishba will tell you that when it comes to strategic management, before you come up with the strategic plan, you must do an assessment. An assessment that looks at the political environment, the technological. There are many things that they look at before they come up with a plan. You even assess who your competitors are. Look at their strengths and weaknesses. Look at the opportunities that the organization has. And you look at the weaknesses and see how do you use your opportunities to downplay the weaknesses. So the same thing for ethics. You need to do a risk assessment. I don't know whether that has been done, but I believe you people have done an risk assessment for your organization. But it's not a one-off event. It's something that you keep doing because risks keep on evolving. The other one, once you do the assessment, you come up with the management strategy plan. So you come up with an ethics management strategy plan. Then you develop the codes and policies which you use to make sure that you implement that plan. And then the 4th step is institutionalization. What does that mean? Who can make an intelligent guess on what institutionalization means? Yes, Oliech? Yes. Say it loud.
Ethics becomes part of it.
Yes, it's like it becomes a way of life. And then finally, monitoring and reporting. Remember in your presentations, I think on Monday, there's a group that mentioned that one of the mitigation plans is to do continuous monitoring and reporting, because that's very important, so that at any one point you know the status of your ethics in the organization. So how do you do ethics risk assessment? Very easy. You identify ethical risks and opportunities in every operation, in all the tasks of your organization or the operations. You analyze every operation and find whether there are ethical risks or opportunities. Then it also reveals what behaviors and practices in the organization could put it at risk. Remember, there are certain loopholes that may exist in an organization which some smart employees can exploit and expose the company or the organization and put it at risk. And in this ethics risk assessment, it identifies opportunities related to ethics that can be exploited in the organization. So you're not just looking at the risks alone, you're also looking at opportunities. And who does this assessment? It can be done by the ethics office or integrity officers in your case, or you could look for an external service provider. EACC does that, but I believe they are overwhelmed because they do it for the entire public service. So there may be cases where you may need the services of a reputable external service provider. Other key players in the assessment are the executive management, risk management, line management, and human resource. The second step is ethics management strategy plan, where after you've done your risk assessment, you design to mitigate the ethics risks identified and to exploit the ethics opportunities. So this is followed by an ethics management plan, which outlines the measures, the objectives, and describes specific interventions to obtain those objectives. So here you are, you have identified the risks or the opportunities. Now you come up with a specific action plan on what are you going to do to make sure that you deal with the risks and you take advantage of the opportunities. And the plan also assigns responsibilities, timeframes, and allocates resources needed to implement the strategy. Because remember, if you do not plan, they say if you fail to plan, you're planning to fail. So it's not just important to plan, but you need to allocate responsibilities on who will do what and by when, and what resources do they need. And you realize that there are some actions that actually don't need financial resources. You know, there are times organizations say, we don't have money to implement this. But you'll realize that in your plan, there are quite a number of activities that will not even require financial resources. Then step number 3 is code and policies. Codes of ethics and ethics policies. At this point, it means you either develop, if you already have them, once you identify your risks, you look at those policies. Are they able to address those risks? And if they're not able to do that, you revise them or you review them to make sure that they are relevant to the risks that you have discovered. And it ensures the ethics strategy is implemented and all identified risks are accounted for, so that you don't lose any risks that you've identified. They don't fall by the wayside. You make sure that all the risks are accounted for and you've come up with a way of dealing with all of them. The process should be participatory. These days, you know that public participation is one of our core values, rather national values, and it is a requirement that before any public policy is developed, there should be public participation. And that cuts across. Even in institutions, before you develop any policy, you need participation of all the key stakeholders, the employees, the clients, whoever is going to be affected by that policy has to give an input. And you must demonstrate that there was public participation. I believe you always do a return to the Directorate of National Values and Cohesion. Do you do that? Yes. Yes. And they always want to know if you had policies that were developed or reviewed, was there public participation, and who actually participated, and was their participation valid? You know, you could just have a list of people who participated, but probably their views never saw the light of day. And then step number 4 is institutionalization, making ethics real. This means designing and implementing proactive and reactive ethics management interventions and systems. And this includes things like ethics awareness programs. Do you have such programs in your organizations? where you just create awareness on ethics? You don't have? You could even come up with things like flyers, email. You have, what is it called? An email that you can where you can communicate to all the employees. Yes, you can take advantage of that, and probably on a monthly basis, you just share a paragraph or two on ethics so that you create that awareness. Or even within your department, within your functions, you always sensitize your people on ethics so that it's always on top of their minds. How about orientation of new employees? Do you do induction for them?
Yes.
And in that induction program, is there anything about ethics that is mentioned?
Yeah, we do that kind of thing.
Okay, very important. So that as they step in there, they know that they know the position of the organization when it comes to matters ethics. Rewarding ethical behavior, I think we discussed this in detail. Do you have a reward system? You do, for ethics, not just for HR of performance, for everything.
Including, yeah.
Okay. Then it includes things like implementing ethics policies, leading by example. This is very important. And when you talk about leading by example, don't look at your boss. Look at yourself. Are you leading yourself by example? When people look at you, the person seated next to you, can they see ethical conduct in you? You know, there's some places where you nominate integrity officers, and when people look at some of the names in that list, they just say, no, this is a mockery of the system. And then another example of reactive interventions is the whistleblowing facilities. You people have said you have. That's very important. Though we know ideally when you create an ethical culture, employees should be comfortable enough and confident enough to report their issues even to their supervisors. They don't have to hide to report. That should be the last line of defense. People should be able to be so free. You should create a culture where the employees are so free to report because they know action will be taken, they will not be victimized. But when the culture there is so much fear and intimidation, that is when employees resort to whistleblowing. Others even go to the media. I saw yesterday a group say that they will let the case go to the media. And I thought that was very bold because you know what the media does? It bites both sides, both ways. Then taking prompt action on those who engage in unethical behavior. Like now, what disciplinary measures have you put in place for those who engage in unethical conduct? Are there any measures that are put in place or wanasema tu hapa ni kusema tu but hakuna kutenda? In your HR policy?
Yeah.
What happens, let's say, if someone is caught stealing from the organization?
There is the procedures
Mm-hmm.
in such a case.
Okay.
Yeah.
And are the procedures conclusive? Because I know there are places where the procedures are there, but you find a matter drags until it just gets lost along the way. Na employee tu anaonekana tu akitembea tu, and people know very well that this person stole.
They are conclusive.
Mm-hmm. They are conclusive. Yeah, it's very, very important. And in your case? Mm-hmm.
And then also because we have a number of staff under contract,
Mm-hmm.
it's dismissal,
Mm.
with no gratuity.
Mm-hmm.
I think under the contract, especially for the ones who come in under contract,
Mm.
when they are signing, there's usually
A clause.
clause
Mm-hmm.
for if you're following unethical
Mm.
behavior. And
Yes.
I've actually seen that happen in the last 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. I've taken over. I've taken over from you, so you may just have to sit where Charles is. Yes, it's very, very important to ensure that there is prompt action. When people are found to have engaged in unethical conduct, it must be very clear. There are no two ways about it. That once you are caught, action will be taken. Because the moment there is that loophole where action is taken on some people and action is not taken on some people, that dilutes the position of the organization when it comes to handling unethical conduct. And it becomes now very hard to implement the policy because people will be pointing fingers and they'll be saying, mbona James bado yuko na tunajua vile alifanya. You see? So HR now is found in a very awkward situation to defend its position. And the final step is monitoring and reporting. There must always be, that's why there are those quarterly reports that you do. They're not just a formality, but ideally, even as you do them, it also gives you a picture of what's happening in the functional areas. It tells you, yeah, these programs are working, or it can tell you, our program is not working, we need to change the direction, we need to change a few things. Because when something is not working, you don't keep doing the same thing. You review it and ask yourself, why is it not working? Why do we need, what should we do differently so that we get the results that we want? When it comes to even things like disciplinary cases, if you analyze the cases, you might see that there is a trend and you need to ask yourself, why is it that all of a sudden people in this department are being found to be in disciplinary cases? What is it? Is it the leadership in that department? Is it the people? Is there a loophole that they have discovered that they are taking advantage of? So that is where monitoring and reporting comes in handy. It also entails monitoring the implementation of the management plan. Remember, in step 5, there is that plan that you have developed after doing the ethics risk assessment. So at this point, you monitor how is it being implemented. Is it being implemented at all? And if it's being implemented, is it being done in the right way? And are we achieving our objectives? The assessment can also be done by an independent party, like the internal audit function, and have the same reports shared with the relevant board committee. I believe you have a board committee that deals with integrity and ethics. What is it called? The subcommittee? Internal audit. Okay.
Rather than the board committee.
Yes. Okay. So who are the key players when it comes to ethics management? We have the ethics office, of course. There are organizations that have actually designated an office, which they call an ethics office, which deals with all these matters to do with ethics. And actually, that's a very good practice because sometimes you find there is so much to do, so many things to do. If you leave duties that have to do with ethics to just these other people, they don't prioritize. They'll tell you here, itangoja, and you find that at the end of the quarter, nothing much has been done. And when you're doing the report, you wonder, what are we going to report? Because you've not done any much. Then the other key player, of course, is the board, because ethics management actually should run from the board level all the way down. Then the CEO, the ethics committee, that is at board level, the executive management, employees, line managers, internal audit, HR office, legal office, and other external stakeholders like suppliers, customers, and the public. Remember, we said that even as you put your house in order, you need to be aware that yes, you may clean your house, but there may be people from outside who are still throwing in trash. So you need to get hold of them also so that they get to know that you have put your house in order and you're not going to entertain any form of collusion, or you're not going to entertain their behavior as suppliers or clients, because some of them actually are the ones who pull customers into, who pull employees into unethical conduct. So what are the roles and responsibilities in ethics management? We look at the six key roles. One is the CEO. What is his role, or what is her role? The CEO must fully support the program in word and in deed. And looking at your attendance here, I don't need to be told that your CEO supports ethics programs. You know, there are some CEOs who would never even allocate any resources for ethics programs because they think it's not a priority, or because they don't support. You know, when it comes to ethics, it has to do with the individual CEO. Do they believe in it? If they don't, you can have very good programs on paper, but when it comes to budgeting, watakwambia hakuna budget. Then the other role is the ethics committee at board level. Their work is to oversight development and operation of the ethics management program. Then the ethics management committee, now within the operational level, which is to be made up of senior officers, and its role is to implement and administer the ethics management program, such as train on policies and resolving ethical. I'm sure
dilemmas.
you have CPC, or what do you call it? Joseph, is it called CPC? Corruption Prevention Committee?
No.
Yes, so that can also double up as that ethics management committee. Oh, their quarterly meeting. Ah, okay. So now they will report to EACC that this quarter training, meeting, tick, training, yeah. It's very important. You see, when you have such committees in place, they make sure that things happen. Then the other group is ombudsmen. Their work is to help coordinate the development of policies and procedures. They help in interpreting them and resolving ethical dilemmas. And I think in your case as integrity officers, you could easily fall under in that group. Ombudsmen or ombudswomen. Is there ombudswomen? Yeah, but no, in the beginning, the word men took care of all of us. So we have no problem. The word?
It's like before,
Mm.
we usually have chairman,
Mm.
you know, if chairperson.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know about before.
Mm-hmm. Should be ombudsperson. But in actual sense, if you're a woman and someone called you a man, does that change you in any way?
This person cannot be given that is what it is like.
But I've just said that in the beginning, the word men was meant to include both men, women, children, the entire humankind. It's only that now watu wameanza kuwa wajuaji. Wanasema, oh, women rights, men's rights. Very soon we'll also have men's rights because I think the women have overdone it. The men have relaxed. They've been left behind. They are nowhere in the forefront. So very soon we will be agitating for men's rights. The other role is assign or develop an ethics officer. That is someone who's trained in ethics, and their work is specifically to do everything around implementation of ethics management. And finally, the other key role is a person responsible for managing the ethics programs. Like now in your organizations, who's that one person who's responsible for managing the ethics programs? Yeah? Administration. Those are the ones who have that responsibility. Okay? At your place, Lishma?
Charles is the manager, risk and assurance.
Oh, that's why he's away attending that meeting? Okay. That is very important because if a responsibility is not assigned to a specific person, you know, it can just fall by the wayside because no one will take responsibility. As we finish, what are the emerging trends in ethics management? One is globalization. We know that we are living in a world where technology has made it so easy to communicate with people from very far. Like now what's happening, they're in a meeting and they are conversing with people hundreds of kilometers away from here because of technology. So globalization is one emerging trend. And as organizations expand into global markets, it means they need to develop policies that are also alive to globalization and policies that adapt to local practices and customs. Because what probably may work in Kenya as an ethics policy, if let's say you people were to expand and go to Congo, you may have to adjust that policy to suit the local practices and customs. Then the other emerging trend is shift of attention and trust to online comments and reviews. These days, you only need to make a negative comment about someone or about an organization online. KOT, Kenyans on Twitter. And within seconds, if it's an organization, Kenyans watakuwa wameshai slaughter, wameitupa. So you must be aware of that. And you must also shift your focus there so that you know what is happening online. You may be so busy putting ethics policies physically and ensuring that they work, but if you're not aware of what's happening online, you may realize that your image was already destroyed online and you're busy telling people that these are our core values, capital. So watu wanaangalia wanashinda, what are these ones talking about? Have you read this on social media? So you must consider, your ethics programs should consider what's happening now so that you have a policy. You also are active online. You can also post your policy position online so that as they come to make their reviews and comments, they also see how alive you are online as well. And then the other trend is ensuring organizations update their disaster preparation plans and test emergency hotlines, communication systems, and employee readiness. This is where I think we do not do very well. Our culture, I think, as is it Africans or Kenyans, we don't prepare for disasters. What tunasema nini? Mungu atatusaidia, si ndio? But it's very important to always make sure that you have a disaster management program. That should also fall under your function. You have that business continuity? Yes, that's very important. And you must keep updating because you never know when a natural disaster will strike. And if it does, you know the communication has to remain open. People want to know what's happening. They want to be updated. Because if nothing happens, then they'll just write off your organization and say, this organization is not serious. As economies grow, the need for compliance and governance is also growing. We are told Kenya, was it last year? Our country was number 8 in terms of economic growth in Africa. It was the fastest growing economy. Number 8 in Africa. Yes, Lydia. So as that happens, you also need to make sure that your compliance and governance programs are also growing with the economy. There's increased demand for leadership accountability. Now more than ever, everyone wants to see that the leader is accountable, right at the grassroots, with devolution. Everyone is so aware that, yes, we have leaders within the county, and we want to see what our leaders are doing. The same thing is happening even in organizations. The people under you are looking at you, and they are demanding for accountability. The other trend is cybersecurity. In this era of technology, with technology, it has come with positives and negatives. There are those who are taking advantage of technology to reap where they did not sow. So you make sure that you put your policies in place. Do you have a policy on cybersecurity? Data management, data protection? Very good. Create a culture that responds to freedom of speech. You remember the other time when someone was stripped at, was it River Road? Now akasema my dress, my? Yes. So these days there is freedom of speech. Until now you are confused. The respect that we used to see in organizations, in institutions seems to be going down because everybody feels that they have a right to express themselves. But Tabitha will tell you that your right ends where? Where? Yes, where his begins. But most of the time, I think we forget that. We think that I have every right to say what I want, to express myself. But you're forgetting that even the other person who's listening to you also has their own rights. So you need to pay attention to some of these things demanding for rights, things like workplace diversity, gender balance, non-discrimination, which have caught global attention. And finally, there is the evolving role of ethics or compliance officers, as networking has now shifted to online spaces. You don't have to wait until you meet physically to network. These days, people meet online and they network online, they plan things online, and they implement things online because of the emerging trends. So as we conclude, an ethics officer is often perceived as the person responsible for ethics management. And this is a myth, because a single person cannot manage the ethics of the entire organization alone. So yes, Charles may be the one who's in charge of, who's responsible for the implementation, but he cannot do it single-handedly. He needs the support of every employee at all levels. It needs to be managed, ethics needs to be managed across job levels and encompass an entire organization, including all its employees and external stakeholders. And consequently, every manager and leader in the organization should manage ethics. Executive management should make sure that there are structures and people dedicated to managing the organization's ethics, because we now know that ethics cannot just run arbitrarily. It cannot manage itself. It has to be managed. And ethics management programs should take into account the emerging trends in ethics management.